Aloha, and so good to see so many of you back for another episode of Tuning Up with Iggy and Dave. I'm sorry to lead off with the disappointing news that it is just me. It's just Dave. There's no Iggy joining us for our performances this week. If you would like to see Iggy, I encourage you to purchase tickets for our performances upcoming this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Hawaii Theater. There is literally something for everyone on the programs this weekend. Friday's series is the launch of our Hapa series. We're thrilled to welcome the Makaha Sons to kick off this unique new start for the symphony, and then our more traditional Masterworks on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm so thrilled to be joined on a Zoom call, as technology allows us to do before they arrive in Hawaii, some of our artists for this weekend. So it's my pleasure to welcome our conductor, Andrew Grams, our violin soloist, Kristin Lee, and the composer of the violin concerto, Vivian Fung. Aloha.
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 So, who's excited to come to Hawaii in February?
I'm not going to be there.
But you're in our neighbor state, right, Vivian? You're in California?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I really wanted to come. Because, it's a special day for this performance. It's my birthday on the 6th.
Oh, really? Okay. Very nice.
Well, a happy early birthday to you. And we look forward to having you in Hawaii the next time we perform one of your works.
Please.
I would like to kind of kick things off. One of the questions that I like to ask on Tuning Up is a very simple question, which is take us back to the very beginning. Tell our audience, in 30 seconds or 30 minutes, the complete history, your complete bio, so that we can get to know you before you join us on stage. I'm going to start with Andrew.
Oh, okay. Put me on first. Great. Well, I started playing the violin when I was 8 years old in the 3rd grade in the public school system of Anne Arundel County, which is between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. I had wonderful public school music teachers who shuffled me to a private teacher, a local private teacher who ran a very good Suzuki studio. And that then led on to me going to the Baltimore School for the Arts in downtown Baltimore. At the same time, somebody introduced me to the National Symphony Orchestra Youth Fellowship Program in downtown Washington, D.C., which is where I met my violin teacher, who really helped out my technique and my sound quality, so that I could get into the Juilliard School for college. I did 4 years at Juilliard. I won a position playing in the New York City Ballet Orchestra as a violinist at the beginning of my senior year. I then worked as a violinist around New York City for a year and a half. And then I applied for and went to Curtis for conducting while simultaneously keeping my job at the ballet, and my then girlfriend was playing in the Dallas Symphony. So I was shuttling between the 3 cities. Did that for some years, then wound up getting to be an assistant conductor with the Cleveland Orchestra for 3 years, started guest conducting. Fast forward, here we are today, and I get to go to Hawaii next week.
Wonderful. Very succinct, and not to spoil it for the others, but I think we have a quartet of Juilliard grads, so we're making someone proud. So, Vivian.
Yes, so my composing began because I didn't like to practice. I was, I was learning the piano, and I had a tiger mom, and so but she didn't know anything, so I started to improvise instead of practice. And I had a piano teacher. I was like 7 or 8 at the time, and she actually, instead of punishing me for it, she actually encouraged me and taught me notation. And then when it came time to enrolling in college, it was Juilliard or bust. So I went to Juilliard and I eventually got my doctorate there. And I eventually, after my doctorate, started teaching there in the music theory department. And lo and behold, who is my student but Kristin Lee? And so she got to know my music, and then she graduated. She started concertizing. I went to one of her concerts and was blown away. I brought a conductor with me by the name of Andrew Sear. We were both blown away. And then the germination of the violin concerto began after that. The three of us kind of plotted, and here we are.
Wonderful, wonderful. Kristin.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Hi, great to see you. All right, I'll tell you my story. So I come from a musical family. My mother was an opera singer. So I grew up going to the opera as a little girl in South Korea on every weekend. Usually I would sleep through them because I was so little, but I was just, surrounded by a lot of music from a young age. And then our family moved to the United States when I was about 7, with the intention of my father just being a visiting professor down south and staying only for a year. At the time, I had started on the piano and the violin. I was much more in love with the piano, but I was also playing the violin. And because it was only going to be a year, my parents thought, hey, piano's a hassle to bring. Let's just focus on the violin. And then next thing you know, I'm studying with one of former students of Dorothy DeLay's in Atlanta, and she encouraged my family, my mother, to have me apply for the Juilliard School pre-college program. I was accepted, and since then I am what you call the ultimate Juilliard baby, where I did my pre-college, my undergrad, and my grad school. So that's sort of my background. And I can't wait to delve more into this piece and talk about that, because we have a great story behind that too. So looking forward to being out in Hawaii.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to getting into the conversation about the repertoire for this weekend's performances. Before we start talking about the Masterworks performances, which are on Saturday and Sunday, I want to touch just a little bit on the performance on Friday evening. So this, as I said before, is the debut of our Hapa series, our Hapa Symphony, Hapa meaning half. And the idea behind this is one that came from our community. As I started my tenure here and went out into the community and listened to what people were wanting, it was, when's the pop series coming back? When are we going to see a representation of the Hawaiian artists that have such a tremendous musical history be elevated to the level of playing with the symphony? And my response is, it's the symphony's new joy to be elevated to the level of the Hawaiian musicians that are performing on stage. They're bringing us up and really creating some really fabulous new arrangements done by our friend who our audience has really gotten to know over the past year and a half, Michael Thomas Fumai. There will be some old arrangements from Matt Kattengub from his time with the old Honolulu Symphony Orchestra. And I have to ask, Andy, what had your experience been with the Makaha Sons and Kala'e before I said, hey, do you mind giving this a try?
Zero. But, if there's one thing that I really love as a conductor, is pretty much just saying yes to anything that's thrown away. And I can remember when an email, maybe it was from you, or maybe it was from my manager. It was just like explaining what the series was and would I be willing to do it. And it was like, absolutely, why not? That sounds like a great time. And so I got the charts for the things that we're going to be doing with the Sons, and it really should be great.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to it. I know our audiences as well, but I have to put a warning out there. If you're coming to the performance, the Hapa series performance, you're going to hear a little bit of classical music. I hope you're receptive to that. That was the idea with this, is that we get to tease the audience just a little bit, and we'll be doing the Stravinsky on the performance on Friday night as well, and hope that our audience that might be coming to see the Makaha Sons or Kala'e, that they might come back on Saturday or Sunday and hear the full performance with the Stravinsky and the Haydn and the violin concerto from Vivian Fung. So moving on to the Masterworks performance, Andy, I'm going to throw this question to you because as we started putting this program together, this is not what I would call traditional Masterworks performances repertoire.
No.
Can you talk a little bit about how this program came together? I think, you know, it's you don't see Pulcinella programmed all that often.
No.
And I think for us to find something that worked the way it did was really quite interesting.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, the departure for the building of the program was, you know, chamber orchestra size. There was this Hapa program that we were going to be doing in conjunction with this, and what sorts of things. And then it was just like, okay, what are the great things for chamber orchestra that we could do? One of the first things that came to mind for me was this little known Haydn Symphony, the Haydn Symphony number 60, subtitled The Distracted One, because I had learned about it and did it for the very first time this past June with my former orchestra, the Elgin Symphony outside of Chicago, when we started performing again after the long pandemic hiatus. And what I loved about it was that, well, number one, the distracted one, I was like, we could all use a distraction right now. So, and the music really supports that idea where it's just, you know, if you, like I talk, I can go on and then I can get distracted, and the music just goes on, and like you're losing your train of thought, and then it comes back all of a sudden. So it's a very comical, farcical piece of music wrapped in this traditional box of it being a symphony. And then, you know, Pulcinella is one of my all-time favorite chamber orchestra pieces. It functions more like a concerto grosso in that you've got the solo string quintet. You've got, you know, really humorous moments like with the trombone and the solo bass. You have music that is as classical as can be, yet played with the unmistakable Stravinsky accent. So it really, those two pieces came. And then Dave, you introduced me to this particular concerto, which I took a listen to and was like, absolutely, this it is a piece of music that struck me as being, and I hope, Vivian, that you don't take offense to this, but it's wondrously wondrous. It made my brain go to places of non-reality, but in that non-reality, it's a very positive experience. At least that's my take on the music.
Excellent. Before we get into the concerto, I want to touch on Haydn. I'm hoping Vivian and Kristin can jump in on this as well. Papa Haydn, the father of the symphony. Here we have his 60th out of 100 symphonies or so. You know, let's say he's in his prime at this point. Why is it that we have this image of him as being such a stoic, stubborn, classical composer when so much of his music is so joyous and humorous? And, you know, maybe it's just me, but, you know, his Instagram account, I think, would have a lot of memes on it. I don't think it would be a lot of, you know, New York Times articles.
Yeah, I find his music underrated. I mean, we always talk about Mozart and Beethoven, but Haydn has, and you really laugh out loud. I mean, I laugh when I listen to Haydn. He's got a great sense of humor in music, and that's very hard to do, actually. Having humor in music is very, very hard to do. And what he does, though, is you study it because it has so much craft in it. And what he does with very little material is quite astounding. Like, you know, just a 5/1 cadence, he can make something, a whole string quartet out of that, you know, and it's quite amazing. So yes, I agree.
I wonder if perhaps just because he was such an important figure to someone like Mozart, and you know, he really was a very respected figure, perhaps that in itself, because people look up to him, created this idea that he's a very serious composer. But we have to understand that, you know, yeah, creating humor that successfully in music, as Haydn did, is a real skill set, and he should be respected for that, but doesn't make that, you know, his music is serious, you know. So perhaps maybe that is the reason why it could have that. And my other thought is, often, you know, perhaps to the audience who's not as familiar with the classical language, have a preconceived notion of classical music being serious. Maybe that's the reason. And perhaps it's just, you know, the lack of familiarity. I really doubt that anyone who listens to music of Haydn's would actually think that this is very serious music, if it's very intentionally humorous from Haydn, because I think he's so successful with that.
You know what? I'm gonna piggyback onto that and add that I think that the serious reputation that a lot of our great composers have comes from many years of performances and recordings that are done in a very serious manner. And what I'm noticing currently these days, a lot of recordings of, say, these Haydn symphonies are being way more flexible and creative with how they perform the music than you would have 30 or 40 years ago, where you would play exactly what's printed on the page, everything in the same tempo, and this, that, and the other. And so, you know, you can play the music very squarely, or you can, you know, play with it in a more flexible, more humorous type style, which is something that's happening now, and it's something that's going to be happening next weekend.
I want to read just the last paragraph of the program notes that were written for this weekend's performance by Michael Thomas Fumai, because it, I think, embodies all of the things that we're talking about right now. And this, I want to encourage our audience to go read what Michael writes about all three of these pieces. You know, to hear a composer's perspective on what's happening in Haydn and what's happening in the Stravinsky, I think is truly a unique experience for our audience. But just to give you a taste of this, if the 1770s had rush hour traffic, a gauntlet of horses, carriages, sheep crossing, and a royal parade stand in the way, the finale prestissimo is hysterical. The music halts with open strings from the get-go, screeching with 18th century breaks. Haydn has the violins detune the G string down a half step to F sharp to be retuned back up. The musicians have forgotten to tune their instruments. It's madness. In any case, the effect is a risky maneuver to perform without breaking the string or returning to the correct pitch in real time, but all is fair in love in war. I want to hear this.
So well written. Great.
It's just speaking about Haydn and Haydn symphonies, you know, I love listening to the string quartets. Are there, you know, you brought up recordings, Andy, you know, do you have favorite recordings of the Haydn symphonies? Is there an orchestra that you think does just a bang up job of Haydn?
Well, I've found that I think it might have been the first complete recording box set of all 104 symphonies with, I believe, Adam Fisher and the Esterhazy Haydn Orchestra. I remember thinking that there was a lot of really dynamic playing in that set. But as I mentioned before, you know, when I compare different performances, so say for this Haydn Symphony number 60 that we're doing, if I compare, you know, Neville Mariner and the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields' recording of that with, say, a very, very recent recording of players, I don't remember the group's name, but on period instruments, with an Italian gentleman, I think Antonini. It's night and day. It's two different ways of approaching the same material.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll drop some of our favorite Haydn recordings in for our audience to listen to in advance of this week here. But I want to depart from Haydn and move on to the centerpiece of our performance, the Violin Concerto No. 1 by Vivian Fung. And instead of having Vivian, the conductor, or the composer, excuse me, introduce the piece, and we already got a little bit of her bio. Kristin, can you talk us through this? Is that by putting you on the spot with the composer present?
Well, I mean, I hope Vivian doesn't mind, but I feel very confident and comfortable talking about this because there's so much to this piece that was based on our relationship, Vivian and my relationship. She mentioned briefly that she was my music theory teacher at the Juilliard School, and that's how I was able to be introduced to her music, because I think it was the last day of the semester she took the day to just play some of her music. But during the semester, I just found Vivian to be so fascinating and wonderful, because instead of just delving into the scores of the composers that we all know of and looking at those works, she introduced us to Balinese gamelan music, and she brought a gamelan ensemble to the Juilliard School. And this was what I think I was in undergrad. I must have been a sophomore, I think. And this was my very first time being introduced to gamelan. And as someone who's always been a huge fan of very rhythmic music and just has a lot of that interest and other genres, just a lot of curiosity and a lot of different types of music, I was completely blown away by just being introduced to gamelan. And I made a point to express that to Vivian, and she was actually playing with the gamelan ensemble at the time. And she was also getting introduced to my playing on the violin. And so it was just this wonderful chemistry that was just being built with, my playing and her interests and her writing and all of that stuff, which basically led to this concerto. And the genesis of it really is me following Vivian to Bali while she was competing in a gamelan competition with her group from New York. And I basically was like, Vivian, I'm just going to tag along and learn about this culture because I'm just completely blown away. So I tagged along with Vivian, spent a week there, got to really explore Ubud, like real north of Bali. And there were just so many layers and layers of this culture that was unveiling itself more and more the more I got to really understand it. So yeah, this piece is really based on that experience, the friendship that we were able to grow through our trip together. Well, more like me tagging along and following her around. But so I think that's really probably the most important component to the creation of this work.
I have two follow-up questions. First, Vivian, where did your interest in gamelan come from? And where did that fall into, as a follow-up, the composition program at Juilliard?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. I grew up in Canada, so I was born and raised in Canada, and so I straddle the world of the in-between. I'm of Chinese background, but I have a Western upbringing, and my family, it's complicated. My family is Chinese, but they grew up in Vietnam, and my relatives also have some history in Cambodia. So I grew up listening to a lot of folk songs that my mother would play. And then, I went to Juilliard, which is a really strictly Western school, for music. But I realized that there was something missing, that, when I was searching for my own voice, there was something missing. And what I gravitated to was Southeast Asia because of maybe my family history. and there's a whole other chapter in that too. But and I, like Kristin, gravitate towards rhythmically charged music, and I really fell in love with gamelan music. I was listening to all sorts of music, and then so I joined a gamelan, and at first I joined a Javanese gamelan, and then I joined a Balinese gamelan, and I got to know people. And this trip came about because the ensemble in New York decided to apply to the Bali Arts Festival, and we got in, and it was sort of like a battle of the bands, and we were competing against a local gamelan ensemble. So it was, very hardcore. We would meet like 4 or 5 times a week and really, learn the repertoire. I even composed a piece, a group composition for that festival. So I guess, a long story short, it's really a way for me to discover more about myself, as far as, the aspect of me being Asian American, Asian Canadian. And this came into play because of my interest in rhythmically charged music, and especially the island of Bali is also lending itself to artistic creativity.
I want to add, Andrew, you were saying earlier that, without knowing the context of all of this background, you were saying that the piece sounds like the wonders of, like the wondrous wonders. And I completely agree with that. But I think because I know of what our experience was really, like what the piece is really based on, and through our experience, it's, for me, it's so wondrous, but there are such like specific visuals from our trip. Like the very beginning, it really, like what Vivian created in the sound world was literally like how it was like to wake up every day in Bali when I was there for that week. And so that sound is like the perfect visuals of what it's like to be there. So yes, it's super wondrous, but at the same time, for me, it's actually very vivid too, in so many ways. Yeah.
I have to add though, in all my years of composing, this relationship that Kristin and I had and actually have, because even though I don't see Kristin so often, I feel like, whenever I see her, it's like, it was just yesterday that I saw her. It's very rare to have that relationship, I think, to have a connection like that, where, you would have a soloist to come with you to really discover what your world is like, is most of the times when you compose a piece, you're by yourself in your studio, writing notes, and then you hand it over to the conductor or the performers, and that's it. The best collaborations that I've had are collaborations where the performer or the conductor or the ensemble takes time to really have that sort of personal maybe connection or that, symbiotic relationship that is just makes a huge difference, as far as both the composition, but also I think the performance too.
I've heard from so many people in our audience as we've started talking about this piece, really excited about it. I think one of the many tremendous things about Hawaii, and especially the University of Hawaii at Manoa, is the composition program and the way that they look east and west equally. And especially under Takuma Ito's direction, and with Don Womack and the entire team of composition teachers there at UH. This is something that is not necessarily familiar, but people are interested in exploring this crossover between worlds. So I know that there's a lot of anticipation for the performances this weekend. So.
Well, there's no better person than Kristin. I mean, technically anybody, any great violinist can do it, but I think because of the shared experience that we had, it makes it really, this is hers as much as mine.
Actually, can I ask a question? I wonder then where having her play like a rock star came from. Was there a particular thing about her, or was there a particular experience that you were like, just rock star the end of that cadenza?
No, this chorus, joking. It's sort of like Haydn,
Because it's really awesome.
I mean, inside jokes. I mean, I just like, you know, that, you know,
Mhm,
have to
mhm.
have that like there. That's
I think that's all. I mean, it's I share that similar personality that Vivian has, so it's all Vivian, but I also totally get it. So it's in her personality. She's, you know, the rock star element is all that's all Vivian.
Well, you know, what's kind of fun, it has been fun for me in learning this piece. You know, I just have the score, and I don't know Vivian or Kristin at all really. And it, in a certain way, it's always been in the back of my mind as I've learned it, as I'm sort of like, I'm getting some real inside information about these two people through this music, which is quite interesting. And then you think to yourself, I wonder if it's going to turn out to be true.
see, that's the difficult thing, is that, you know, notes on a page are just a roadmap, right? And it's always going to be so interesting for a musician to kind of peel the layers back. A good musician would do that. It's not just about the notes, but the story behind it. Yeah.
And just to clarify for our audience at home, in the climax of the cadenza, in the violin part, in the orchestral score, the instruction is, quote, play like a rock star. So that is the direction for all who perform this after Kristin, that is to be embodied. So, you know, we just, in December, we had a harpsichordist here, and he played Brandenburg Concerto, number 5. And there is very much a rock star moment. And I had a patron come up to me after the concert and said, wow, that was quite the Jimi Hendrix moment there, when the harpsichordist just went off on his own. And we're looking forward to the rock star moment at the performances this weekend.
Really hope I do it justice.
You will.
Everyone's gonna be looking for that.
Like, you're gonna press the note, you know, you do it.
Well, we're really excited to give the Hawaii premiere of this piece, and look forward to introducing our audience to more of your works, Vivian, in the future. Really admire your contribution to contemporary music. It's really quite fascinating, so thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the last piece on our program, the Stravinsky, who was looking backwards, I would say, with this Pulcinella. Andy, can you talk us through the piece a little bit? You know, what was going on here? A ballet work, if I believe so, and just your piece of trivia. The artist who designed the sets and painted the sets was Pablo Picasso.
Yes, the impetus for the work was a commission from Diaghilev, if I'm remembering correctly. And Diaghilev was actually quite specific. He wanted Stravinsky to make a ballet based on the older music of Pergolesi. And from the sources that I've seen, Stravinsky was not so keen on, you know, working with older styled music, but you know, a commission is a commission. So he took the opportunity. He learned a lot about that old music and came to see the opportunity of using it in a modern dialect or in a modern setting. And so he came up, you know, the ballet includes 3 vocalists, and it's somewhat longer than the suite that we're going to play. We're not going to have any vocalists, but it's a wonderful, wonderful, I think, joyous piece of music that just, instead of being a real museum piece, it's a more modern, it's something that's old that's been put through a more 20th century prism, if that makes sense.
If some of our audience attended our very opening night back in November at the Hawaii Theater, you would have heard a notable encounter that was done by our conductor, Scott Yu. And Scott did an entire hour-long presentation on Stravinsky's Firebird. So our audience has grown very familiar with Stravinsky's style and the choices that Stravinsky made in the Firebird. So I think you'll be hearing something quite a bit different in this work by Stravinsky. And again, I did not know the plot of the ballet. And I just want to, again, read the plot that was put together by Michael Thomas Fumai in the program notes, just to encourage people to go read this, because it put it in a much different light for me. It's a piece that I'm very familiar with. I've played it hundreds of times, it feels like. But Michael starts, the plot is convoluted and would find welcome in any Christopher Nolan film.
Yes.
The story stems from jealousy. Pulcinella, much loved by all the young girls in the neighborhood, draws ear from two young men in a town and eventually his love, Pimpinella. The men disguise themselves as Pulcinella and stab him dead. However, this is all a ruse to win Pimpinella's forgiveness. Pulcinella had changed places with a double who pretends to die. Disguised as a magician, the real Pulcinella appears and brings his double back to life. Pulcinella and the magician switch back, paving the way for a miraculous resurrection. Pulcinella eventually finds brides for the two men and weds Pimpinella.
Yep. It's
Yep.
If you can follow that.
Can I add that the bass solos are some of my favorite moments in this, because when you think of bass, you don't really, I think Stravinsky and Ravel for me are like the two composers that really made use of the bass in a very different ways. And you have bass solos, and which really normally doesn't really happen in orchestral music, which is great. And one other thing I wanted to point out, Andrew was mentioning, a commission is a commission. Well, Stravinsky had cufflinks, and if you think about his initials and you superimpose the initials together, what do you have?
Is.
No, you put them on top of each other, you have a dollar sign.
Oh, okay. Now I see. I love it. I love it. Oh.
That's excellent. Yeah, good piece of trivia there. Well, I look forward to seeing Kristin and Andrew here in Hawaii in just a few days as rehearsals begin for these performances. Vivian, I'm so glad we can bring this work to our audience here. And again, look forward to the opportunity to bring you here to work with the students of UH Manoa and to also work with our orchestra in the future. We have a very, very special orchestra here in Hawaii. Phenomenal group of musicians, and this past 20 months has been difficult on everyone in our industry. And to kind of one closing question, has there been anything for each of you through the pandemic here, and as we're still emerging from this, that has been particularly impactful to you as a musician, maybe, or outside of music? Kristin?
I think, the industry has gone through so much. And as a musician, as a performer, when all of it began, it was a pretty difficult time. But a lot of musicians are always on the go, 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 go all the time. That this sort of stop allowed a lot of us, including myself, to just reflect and a little bit, think about like what does it really mean to be a musician in this world. And every opportunity that you have to be able to share this beautiful piece of art form is really just, it's just so, like, we need to be so grateful for that. And in the times before COVID, we often just one city to the next, and then finish your concert, finish your day by 1 a.m. and then wake up at 4 a.m. then on to the next thing. And so I think a lot of us have kind of forgotten about how important what we do really is. And especially in a time of crisis, and especially in a time when everybody is dealing with something challenging together, music plays such an incredibly important role. So I have to say, coming out of this time, I have never felt more um, valued and feel like I have a purpose in what I'm doing. So all in all, I think it really helped me realize that music is is great, and it's really important, and it's something that is so essential in our lives and in this world. So that's the biggest takeaway for me, really.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, I love that word, essential.
Mhm.
Yeah. Vivian?
Oh, I mean, Kristin said it well. I think, I really cherish the moments, of collaboration even more now. And to actually be in the concert hall, I will cherish that forever, I wrote a flute concerto during the pandemic, and it was performed without me. It was performed virtually without me with a socially distanced orchestra. And it was my first experience of not being there for the premiere of a piece. And it was such a strange feeling. It's like, you're gestating, you're giving birth to this piece, but you're not there for it. And it was a very, very strange feeling. So I am so grateful for every opportunity to collaborate and to work with amazing musicians, and so thankful that you've programmed my piece. I'm going to be there with you in spirit, definitely.
Thank you. Andy, anything to add?
No, everything has been said beautifully. It's just the pandemic gave busy musicians the opportunity to, well, I can only speak for myself, but really I think a lot of people felt this way. It's when you're busy making concerts all the time and you're learning music and this, and you can get have certain tunnel vision, and the remembering that this is for people, that this is, we make music for other people, was sort of the real mental reset for me over the course of all of the downtime of the pandemic.
Do you mind if I add just one more thing? I also want to just say how important live music, realizing how important live music is also, because a lot of us instrumentalists, we were playing so much over the virtual platform, which we're very grateful for, that we have this platform. It's important that we were able to play it, at all. But I remember my very first concert, live concert experience was about after a year. I had the great privilege to be able to travel to Taiwan. I had to quarantine for 14 days, but I got to go and sit in the audience to listen to the symphony play there. And this visceral physical reaction to the vibrations of the bass, like, that is something that you can't have. And I realized, like, we also took that for granted, like, oh, you go to live concerts and it's really fun and it's exciting, but I never had been away from live concerts for that long. That's coming back to it and actually having like a physical reaction to the vibrations of the sounds. I was like just in tears, and I realized, wow, this is why we need the live music. It's not just the music that we need, but we need to be in it together. Like, Vivian was saying, we have to be in the same room. We have to feel that energy. And unfortunately, that just doesn't happen over the screen. So I just wanted to emphasize and also bring that personal experience to the story too, because it's very, very, it was quite quite a remarkable experience that I had.
And a wonderful segue to encourage everyone to come to the performances this weekend. I could not plead or encourage any more than is what has just been said by our artists this week. Please come support the symphony. Come hear the performances. It will be something that stays with you for the rest of your life, especially in the times that we are in now. And obviously, more information on our website at myhso.org. Tickets start at just $18 for all the performances this weekend. Before we go, I'm remembering back, seeing what people were doing during the pandemic. Am I remembering a Mozart duo with a violist on a balcony in Taiwan? Is this, Kristin, is this?
Yeah, that was I'm glad that you got to see that. It was with the fabulous violist Matthew Lipman. We happened to be quarantined room next to each other. Obviously, we couldn't see each other face to face. And Matt was practicing with the doors open, and I realized I could hear him. So I was like, I went out to the balcony, and then we couldn't really see each other, but I was like, Matt, can you hear me? And then we just sort of like was like, should we try playing this? Because we've been playing together a lot and had a lot of this under our belt, and so and then and then someone filmed it, and there it was.
It was really wonderful to see that creativity and, you know, going through whatever it takes to get, you know, collaboration together. So it was fun to see. And, you know, we've got some hotels here with balconies. Maybe we need the entire orchestra, you know, 64 musicians and doing a Haydn Symphony. Andy, we'll put you out on a flotation device in the ocean. How about that? Creativity.
A ticket for that, definitely.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time. Thanks for joining us for this, for tuning up. We'll have Iggy back for the next one, I promise. And we look forward to seeing you at the performances this weekend. Thanks for your support of the Symphony. I'm Dave Moss, the Executive Director, and on behalf of all of us at the Symphony, thank you and aloha.